Hi, I'm Liz Bradbury. I'm the director of the Training Institute of the Bradbury Sullivan LGBT Community Center. And at the center, we do cultural competency trainings on LGBT issues, but also I teach art history from a queer perspective. So I'm going to be teaching classes. I normally teach 4 classes a year, twice a year, but this time I'm going to do a special presentation in real time of art history from a queer perspective, vignettes during the virus. And so for Lesbian Visibility Day, which is April 26th, I'm going to talk about Loie Fuller, who was a dancer, an inventor, and a choreographer at the beginning of the 1900s. So Loie Fuller was part of the Art Nouveau movement. Art Nouveau took place between 1890 and 1914. It kind of stopped at the beginning of World War I. And it was characterized by images like this. This is a tile, and it was an international style that really took its motivation and its inspiration from natural forms. It was inspired by plants and flowers, and you could see it in graphics like those, or you could see it in accessories like this gate that was in Paris. You can also see it in of the time during that time in furniture. This is a desk by Hector Guimard, obviously with those beautiful plant flowing forms, no straight lines in Art Nouveau. This is a sideboard also by Hector Guimard. And this is an architectural detail that shows those undulating lines and flower-like movement in everything from the steps to the side of that sideboard. Not only was it happening in Paris, it was happening in Spain. This is the La Sagrada family temple, which was a cathedral. It's known as the Cathedral in Barcelona, Spain, and it's by Antoni Gaudí. He created this, he was working on this in the 1920s. It's still being built. It's available to look at and to enter in Barcelona. It's a really beautiful plant inspired natural form inspired architecture. Here's another table by Hector Guimard. You can see those vine-like aspects to them. And also in America, in the United States, Louis Comfort Timpany was really influenced by the Art Nouveau style. He made his beautiful windows and these incredible lamps that have these beautiful natural forms to them. In graphics, you could see these incredible posters and palm cards that were about Sarah Bernhardt, who was the most famous actress of the day, most famous actor of the day, actress of the day. And these are, Sarah Bernhardt was also part of the queer community. She was bisexual. She was in these really important plays. And this little palm card, which was also a big poster, is about Maud Adams. Maud Adams was also a very, very famous actress at the beginning of the 1900s, and she created the role of Peter Pan. She was very beautiful, and she was a lesbian. Um, During this time in 1900, the city of Paris created the entrances to their subways with these beautiful Art Nouveau forms. And what was happening in Paris in 1900 was the Paris Exhibition. The Paris Exhibition was a World's Fair, and World's Fairs happened all through the 1800s and into the 1900s, all the way up until the 1970s, where areas of different countries would be created as an enormous exhibition, acres and acres and acres. And this happened in Paris, right around the Eiffel Tower, where there were buildings and pavilions and enormous creations of exhibition halls that were in place for about 2 years. And that happened in all over the world, actually. It happened in the United States, in New York, and Chicago, and St. Louis in the 18 and 1900s. And in the Paris exhibition, the theme was Art Nouveau, and in Paris they built these metro entrances, these subway entrances, at the same time as the exhibition to really highlight Paris's commitment to the beauty of Art Nouveau. So Loie Fuller was all the rage. She was so there. She is. There she is in 1900, and also a little bit younger. She was when Art Nouveau was all the rage. She burst onto the scene, and she was known as the living embodiment of Art Nouveau, and that's because she created this miraculous, beautiful dance that looked like flowing, natural flower shapes. So here she is. She was born in 1862 and died in 1928 of pneumonia, actually, um, and possibly from complications of having the flu in 1918, from the flu epidemic of 1918. She was a child actress. Her parents were actors as well. And when she was a young adult, she began to do choreography and perform dances in burlesque as a skirt dancer. So burlesque was kind of a lower art form, music hall. And skirt dancers were women who danced by throwing their skirts around, sort of like can-can dancers. But Loie Fuller developed this incredibly unique choreography by using this costume with 100-yard silk costumes that are illuminated by beautiful lights that she designed and patented. And she created and performed some very famous dances, including the Serpentine dance and the fire dance. And she did these in the Folies Bergère in Paris. And this was during the Paris exhibition. She actually had a pavilion in the Paris exhibition, her own theater, that where she was known as the Electric Fairy. And this is the theater that was built for her at the Paris exposition. And you can see that it has that beautiful Art Nouveau line to it, that incredible flower-like natural form. If you went into it, you would go through this entrance, and on either side of the entrance is sculptural forms of Loie Fuller. That's her with her costume flowing up over her head. This was the Loie Fuller Theater at the Paris exhibition that thousands and thousands of people went to see. So here she is doing some of her dances, these incredibly flowing costumes that she created and choreographed. This is the serpent dance, or the serpentine dance, with this enormous flowing silk. It's great stuff and unique. This is possibly a different person doing this dance. And in fact, when she was in the United States, um, in the early part of the 1890s, when she created this dance, people began to steal her ideas, and it was depressing to her. She really was annoyed by it. In fact, she patented some really terrific stage lighting, including chemical compounds that she could create, that she used to create these gels to put over the lights to make bright colors to project onto the white silk of her costume. She also created chemical salts for luminescent lighting that caused this beautiful colors on her costume as well. But people were stealing the dance, so she decided to leave for Europe in June of 1892 because she was tired of having people steal her ideas. So she went to Paris, and she had a terrific time. And in fact, Paris loved her, and she ended up living there for the rest of her life and was a revolutionary in the arts. When she arrived in Paris, now this is a picture of the Eiffel Tower, and you can see some of the buildings of the Paris exhibition. That was in 1900. But Loie really got there in 1892, and she was there to audition with Edward Marchand, who was the director of the Folies Bergère. The Folies Bergère was there in the Moulin Rouge. That was where everybody was. She wanted to be at that theater, and so she was all excited. She meets this guy. Here he is, Edward Marchand, and she's going to do her serpentine dance for him. That was her thing. That was her creation. Here's one of her early costumes of the serpentine dance. And when she gets there, at the door of the Folies Bergère, she finds out that there's a huge poster that there's this woman named Mabel Stewart doing her dance, her serpentine dance there at the Folies Bergère. She knew Mabel Stewart, and Mabel Stewart had seen Loie dance and had stolen her ideas. and there's another person doing the serpentine dance. And so she was just devastated by this because this was going to make her reputation, and she's thinking this person's already doing my dance. So Marchand says to her, "You can't. I'm not even going to meet with you until after Mabel's matinee is over." So Loie goes into the theater and she's watching Mabel Stewart do the dance, and she's just devastated. And then she sees, there she is watching the dance, and she sees Mabel doing the dance. And Loie wrote in her autobiography that was actually not published. She says, "The longer she danced, the calmer I became. I could have kissed her for her inefficiency because, truthfully, Mabel Stewart wasn't really that good, and Loie knew that she would be so much better." So she gets on the stage after the matinee is over, and she dances, and she's, magnificent. And Marchand is so impressed that he, in effect, fires Mabel Stewart because she had stolen Loie's dance. She didn't do it as well. He hires Loie Fuller to do the dance, but he says to her, "I've already advertised that Mabel is going to do this for the next 2 days at the Folies Bergère. So you're going to have to go on pretending you are her." So Loie, for 2 days. So Loie ends up dancing the dance in a sort of subdued way, not that impressively. And then after that, she has her own premiere under her own name, and she dances 300 nights in a row at the Folies Bergère, and she is the toast of Paris. People were screaming with applause every time she did this dance. It was so breathtaking. It was really significant. The beautiful colors that happened because she had these lanterns, and she developed that and continued to work on that so that the dances were just extraordinary. In fact, one reviewer said, "On stage, her arms lifted and molded the silk into undulating patterns. As she rotated, colored spotlights made the silken clouds into vivid tones, a giant violet, a butterfly, a slithering snake, a white ocean wave rising and spinning weightlessly." There she is in her costume. And she also had a dance where she would create the floor constantly undulating with this parachute silk. And she had a troupe of her own students. There were a lot of young girls actually in her troupe that would dance among these mountains of moving fabric. Here's Loie again. And here is her with some of the colors. Now these are actually, in those days they didn't have color photography, so these are hand colored pictures. And then this is a picture of someone doing these dances today. Unfortunately, we just don't have a great depictions of her doing these today. You have to imagine them. They were mesmerizing. They were just incredible with her spiraling skirts. And she tried to patent the choreography of her serpentine dance because people kept stealing it. But the courts said to her, and this was in the United States, the dance was too abstract to patent. And that was a precedent that was set all the way up until 1976, when finally federal copyright law was extended to the choreography and arrangements of dances, and even marching band arrangements were then able to be copyrighted and patented so that people couldn't steal them anymore. So here she is. And it's an interesting thing. She was not an incredibly beautiful woman. She was just an incredibly inventive woman, and she could really swing the silks to the point where people would cheer out loud. She didn't go back to the United States for any extensive amount of time, but she would occasionally go to see performances by her students. She had a school. And she also began to realize that people were using her work and her dance as inspiration. Artists were doing that. And so she decided to control the production of her own image by actually paying artists and lithographers and painters and sculptors into making images of her that she could control to be sure that they were as beautiful as she wanted them to be. So that included these posters that were advertising her at the Folies Bergère. And the posters like this were huge. Again, they were 6 feet high, 4 feet wide. They were extraordinary. And the artists that did them were just terrific. And you can see how many beautiful posters and the incredible artists that were creating these enormous pieces of art that depicted her dance. Here she is and just in glory, and people were seeing these, and they didn't just create one or two of these posters. They were plastered everywhere around the city of Paris, and they were enormous. And there they are. They're just incredible. This is by Toulouse-Lautrec, because Toulouse-Lautrec worked closely with the Folies Bergère, and he painted and created lithographic posters of all sorts of different people who were performing there. And this is one of her. There's another poster of her dancing, and this is of her doing the fire dance. Note that square of light at her feet in that fire dance one on the left. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this is another Toulouse-Lautrec, and look at how abstract that image of her is. Because when she created this, and this is another Toulouse-Lautrec, it wasn't about her body. It was about the image that she created with the silks, and that's what Toulouse-Lautrec is really showing in these pictures. And this is the cover of Salome, which was created by I believe Oscar Wilde, and that is her. That's Louis Fuller on the front of that booklet, that music booklet. And then she had this company, the Larch Company, create lamps and vases of bronze and gold-plated bronze. This is a lamp. And you can actually see that this has a cord coming out of it. If you look at the lower left of this lamp, there's a cord coming out of it, because that actually was illuminated out of the top. These beautiful lamps, I mean, just think of how terrific this would be to have something like this. These were tall. They were about probably 18 inches to 20 inches high, 24 inches high. Incredible, beautiful things that she controlled, because she wanted to be sure that they were really lovely and really beautiful. And clearly they're her. This is a vase, and you can see this is one view of it, and then this is the front view of that vase, and it's this flowing silk is the epitome of Art Nouveau. There she is again. This is Loie Fuller. This is great. This is not like the McDonald's plastic things that depict somebody in a movie, but it's the same idea. It's really the same idea. And there were these ceramic sculptures as well. This is a bronze, and this is a bronze patina, green patina bronze. This is really a beautiful piece. And I believe this is a bookend, actually. Really terrific stuff. And here's one more of the sculptures that she made sure were as beautiful as her dance was. So this is her on the stage, and this actually shows how the light shined on her on the stage. She had a team of 50 electricians, and she had her own theater by then. And this was taking place in the theater that was in the Paris exhibition in 1900. She had 6 men to test out additional ideas in a laboratory about how she could do lighting with the bright colors that she wanted to achieve. And she used magic lantern technology, which is, a magic lantern was the forerunner to the movie projector, and it used lenses to focus the light on her. First time that people had done that. Also in this picture, you can see, this is the fire dance, and in the picture you can see a square of white at the bottom of her feet. That was a cut hole where the light was projected up through the floor, and it was this bright red and orange changing light that made her look like she was on fire as she was flowing these beautiful silks around. To create that fire dance, that's how she did that. And you can see in this illustration, there's a guy down in the front, which is sort of cutaway there. People really wouldn't have been able to see him, where the light is going up through the bottom of the stage. And it was magical looking. So though she wasn't able to patent her choreographic moves, she was able to patent her costume. And this is a patent sheet for her costume and the silks. And those rods were what she held to move the silks around, not just holding the silks, but extending her arms with these rods, which were heavy, because these were wood. And they weren't just like really light, aluminum that they use in aircrafts that has no weight at all. And this wasn't nylon that was really, really light. This was silk, and it was heavy, and it was hard for her to move around. But she was strong. She was heavy. She wasn't a light little lithe ballerina. There she is. She's tough. And one of the things about her is she was a lesbian. This is her partner. Her partner's name was Gabrielle Bloch. Her professional name was Gab Soray, and she was Loie's partner. They lived together and loved each other for 30 years until Loie died in 1928. So Gab was the daughter of a very, very rich banker in Paris, and so she had quite a life of privilege. She always danced she always dressed in a very masculine way. She looked like a man for the most part. They were openly in a relationship, and it caused problems for them because people that wasn't 100% okay in 1900. Gab managed Loie's tours. She did the tech. Managing the tour was tricky. We're talking about 50 electricians. She did the tech. She produced her shows. She worked to produce movies of her, and tried to produce movies of her, and actually produced movies of her dances after Loie died. Because when Loie died, Gab inherited the dance troupe and the laboratory where they were making the lighting equipment, and she tried to continue to honor Loie's life and her career, and produce films and technical productions to honor her legacy. So Loie and Gab were together for 30 years, and they loved each other. And when Loie died, Gab fell in love with Damia, who was this woman. She was a singer, and they actually had all worked together for many years, but she fell in love with her and stayed with her until Gab died. And then when Gab died, this woman, Damia, fell in love with designer Eileen Gray. And Eileen Gray was a famous furniture designer and architect. I actually studied her in graduate school. And Gab had worked in Eileen Gray's store where she sold her furniture in Paris. Gab also, she was affluent, and so she knew Gertrude Stein. She hung out with Natalie Barney and Romaine Brooks and all of those salons of lesbian artists and writers and literati that were happening in Paris at the time. This is Vanessa Redgrave, and Vanessa Redgrave is depicting this she's depicting Isadora Duncan, who in a movie that was in the 1960s about the life of Isadora Duncan. Isadora Duncan was a dancer, a modern dancer, and she was friends with Loie Fuller. Isadora Duncan, by the way, was bisexual, and she toured with Loie all around. She was young, and she met Loie and was impressed by her, and she toured with her around Europe. Many people say that Isadora Duncan was the mother of modern dance, and she had an incredible body. Look at this body, wow. And she was a great, great modern dancer. She was very famous. She had a beautiful personality. She had a flamboyant personality, and also she was a very beautiful body and an incredibly beautiful face. And in some ways that made her a little bit more famous than Loie, even though she was less of an inventor or choreographer in a lot of ways. Isadora Duncan also had a very public relationship as the mistress of the singer sewing machine guy, who was would have been a billionaire today. Some historians suggest that Loie had a brief affair with Isadora. Not clear whether that was really true or not, but they certainly were friends, and they worked together for a long time, and they were rivals too. Loie, in fact, was friends with a lot of famous people. She was friends with Thomas Edison. You can imagine that, since she was working with light. She was friends with, this is the Queen of Romania, Marie, the Queen of Romania. She was friends with Maurice Denis, who was a painter of the Fauve style. This is Auguste Rodin. There's Loie with the kiss that was by Rodin, the sculptor. And she was also very good friends with Marie Curie and also Pierre Curie, her husband. Marie Curie, of course, they discovered radium, and Loie was all interested in radium because it gave off light, and she thought, oh, I could use this for my dances. In reality, that would have been pretty dangerous, and Marie Curie said, look, it took us a long time to get this radium together. To just find a little bit of it, we can use it for other things. One of the things that Marie Curie did was she wore a little radium pendant, which actually made her get cancer and die after a while. But they were really good friends, and they were really involved with each other as pals, and they spent time together. Um, Paris loved Loie Fuller while she was dancing. Her flamboyancy on the dance floor was what attracted people to her, but she was not a forceful personality. When she got off the stage, she dressed in a very dowdy way. She was kind of plump, and she didn't care about the way she looked that much. She wasn't that interested in society parties. She had a long-term relationship. Wasn't looking for a rich guy to keep her, and perhaps in some ways that kept her less famous. She was this is her costume. So here's, she actually had a costume. This costume had 1,000 square feet of fabric. 1,000 square feet would cover the whole floor of our community room at the LGBT Center in Allentown. This is her troupe of dancers, the young women who dance with her. Some of them are children. You can see that they're kids. And this was a little bit of a rival thing because Isadora Duncan was going to set up a school as well. And Gab wanted Loie to have a school before Isadora did. You can see this enormous costume she had with 1,000 square feet of fabric. And you can almost imagine how heavy that would have been to move around. So Loie Fuller had just an incredible life. And she died relatively young. She was in her 60s when she died of pneumonia in 1928. But and I wish I could show you a film of what she looked like. The Lumiere brothers made films of other women who were dancing the Serpentine dance in Loie's performance, but they aren't her. Even though they say they're her, they're not her. And the films don't do it justice. They don't show her the long sticks that she used to hold the huge amount of fabric. The film is jerky. It doesn't look good. If you want to see what she looked like, search Jody Sperling's dances, and they're on YouTube. And if you see the one that's the Claire de Lune dance, it's especially beautiful, and you can imagine Loie Fuller dancing that way. I would love to connect you to that through this presentation, but YouTube would bump me off for stealing her video. You can see it though, and just look for Jody Sperling because they're very easy to find. So thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe. I'm Liz Bradbury, Director of the Training Institute of the Bradbury Sullivan LGBT Community Center. I present a variety of art and history from a queer perspective classes on dozens of topics from cave painting to pop art and at least 18 other subjects, individuals, and I talk about all different genres that have to do from a queer perspective and with regard to LGBT artists. If you would like to get together a group of friends and have me do a Zoom presentation for you on some special occasion, I would love to do that. You can, we also do trainings, our staff at the Training Institute and I present trainings on LGBT cultural competency and on LGBTQ equity and on LGBTQ health disparities and other LGBTQ issues. If you're looking for trainings for your organization or business, please get in contact with me. And you can read about our classes and trainings and contact us through our website at www.bradburysullivancenter.org in the program section and see Training Institute. Contact me for further information, and I'll be happy to talk to you about future trainings or classes in art history from a queer perspective. Thanks a lot. Bye.